Thank you, Myra, for sharing. We have Rebecca now sharing with us. Rebecca Porter has traveled all over the United States and internationally to share her abortion testimony to government leaders and in workshops at the United Nations. As a member of Operation Outcry now for over 10 years, she has served the Florida state leader of the organization, where her testimony was used to change the ultrasound law in her state. Rebecca Porter.
Thank you, Carmen. I was 13 when Roe v. Wade legalized abortion in our nation. As a young woman, you just think about who's going to be the next boy that you kiss. You're not paying attention to the news or what's going on, and I'm sure back then there was a real battle and a fight, and that's what we're continuing today at almost 40 years. At the age of 21 is when I actually had my first abortion. I was a single mom. I was in a shameful relationship, and I chose to have an abortion. When I went to the clinic, they told me it was just a blob of tissue, and it's something I could just do, and I could go on with my life, and I wouldn't have to think about it again. So I made that decision, but it was a lie, everything that they told me. One of the main things that it did was it broke the bond that I had with my son. When he would begin to cry, I couldn't comfort him. I couldn't be around him. And the other thing it is, I don't share this very often, but the Lord put on my heart to share about the nightmares. It was actually a night trauma that I had. I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would walk into my son's bedroom and I would see myself actually standing at the foot of his crib. And in one arm I would be holding him by his ankle and he would be upside down. And as I would see myself, in the other hand I was actually holding a butcher knife and there would be blood dripping from it. And I remember just seeing a puddle of blood on the floor. And I would be so traumatized, I would wake up and I can remember running into my son's bedroom to make sure that it wasn't something that I had actually done. And it would upset me so bad that I would take the butcher knives out of my house even. And this went on for about 3 or 4 times during that first year after my first abortion. It was about 12 years later that I actually chose abortion a second time. I went to an abortion clinic in Tampa, and they said because I had gotten pregnant several times on birth control pills, that after the abortion that they would give me a Depo-Provera shot, and they guaranteed me that I couldn't become pregnant after that. So I agreed. I had that second abortion, and it was very hard, very difficult. But I trusted in the abortion clinic. I trusted in the birth control method. But I know after I had that shot, I was very hard on me. It really changed my personality. I decided there was no way after 3 months that I was going to take another one. So I just waited for my cycle to start so I could go back on birth control pills. And as I was waiting and waiting, I never started. So I actually, after a few months later, I went back again and had another pregnancy test, and I was pregnant again. I just remember feeling so much shock because I believed the abortion clinic. I believed what they told me about birth control. And I just knew that, how could I do this again? Here I'd already had 2 abortions. As a young woman, we never dream of having an abortion, much less going on to dream of having 2, and now here I was facing my choice of a third. I wanted to place this child for adoption. I felt it was something that I could do, that I could live with myself. As I told my fiance my choice, he refused to sign the adoption papers. He said that he wouldn't sign. He said that to hopefully that I wouldn't make the abortion choice. I do have to say none of the fathers wanted me to abort their children. But I was in my mid-30s and I was a very stubborn, self-centered woman. And I went back for that third abortion. I remember when I walked in, I was crying at the facility. They didn't speak to me. They didn't ask me questions why I was so upset. They didn't give me other choices or offer to help me. All they did was they took me back and laid me on the table. Even though I didn't know how far along I was, they never offered me an ultrasound. The nurse, she walked beside me and told me, because I was laying there on the table and I was crying, and she came up to me and she says, "Oh, it's okay, it'll be all right." And I just remember so much anger because I knew what I was doing was not okay, and I knew it wasn't all right what I was doing. The abortionist walked in and I wouldn't look at him, I just laid there crying. And after a few minutes the procedure started, and I just remember it became very, very painful. And as I began to cry harder, the nurse walked down to the edge of the table, at the end of the table, and to see what was going on. And I remember for some reason, I did happen to look at her, and I remember seeing her look down at the fetal remains jar, and then she looked up at me and she smiled as she said, "Oh, look, twins." I remember I was in shock, and I just remember to scream, and I tried to get off the table, and the abortionist began to scream at me and said that he couldn't stop what he was doing because of the fetal tissue that would have been left inside of me. They actually had to come in and have people hold me down while they finished the procedure. Later in the recovery room, the abortionist came in and said that he would speak to the nurse about her behavior. And I realized by him telling me that I wasn't supposed to hear about my children. But I believe that God allowed me to hear that it opened my eyes to what abortion really was. And I hope that by sharing my testimony, that other people's eyes will be open too. Thank you.